Mandamus stayed that temporary restraining order, so all voters who were standing in line after 7 p.m. will no longer be able to cast a provisional ballot. Any voters that were standing in line at 7 p.m. will continue to be processed. We're checking with our judges now to see where they are with processing the last voters that were in line at 7 p.m. I can tell you that as of it's minutes before stepping over to you, we have voted in person a little bit over 1 million voters, and we're still, of course, processing mail ballots that were received today, and we will continue releasing results on an hourly basis as they come in from the polling locations tonight. We will continue updating reports every hour on the hour until we complete the results themselves.
So you arrived at a polling location between 7 and 8 to cast a provisional ballot. Those votes are not.
That is correct. So any provisional votes that were cast at the location from 7 p.m. until 8, based on that extended order, would not be counted. No, I do not.
So they're not counted at all?
No, they will not be counted. And that's part of the reason that, based on the law, that when you have provisional ballots counted based on an extended order, that you segregate them so that if a court determines that they shouldn't be counted, that they aren't added into the total process.
But you know right now that they're not going to be counted.
According to the Supreme Court, they will not be counted.
Do you know anything about Seabrook? We've been hearing that there were issues with almost every polling location in Seabrook with no paper.
I can't talk about specifics with Seabrook, but we will certainly be taking a look at every location that indicated they did not have enough paper.
So the places that, for example, various locations that are out of paper, there are people who are waiting, right? Because they arrived at 5 or 6, they arrived before 7, and they're waiting for the paper, and say the paper's still not there yet. And let's say the paper gets there at 8:30 now, gets there like 8:50. They cast a ballot, that would not be provisional, right?
So let me back up on that premise and say that the locations that indicated to us that they needed paper, we sent them paper. So I'm not aware that any location that requested paper did not get paper, but we certainly will assess that. So if those voters are standing in line, yes, they would, before 7 p.m., they will have the opportunity to cast a ballot.
But to your knowledge, every place had paper by 7?
To my knowledge.
Are you upset that this happened?
What happened with the provisional ballot? Is it just going to be thrown out then?
I'll be talking with the Secretary of State's office and county attorney to make sure we handle them properly.
Are you disappointed as elections administrator that these folks will be covered?
Well, certainly. We want every voter who has an opportunity to cast a ballot to cast a ballot. And we certainly understand when a court issues an order to extend the hours, that the voters that are covered by that order would be able to cast a ballot. But we also understand that when the Supreme Court comes in and issues a stay to that order, then I follow the orders of the court. That's what I started with the trial court, and I, of course, will follow the Supreme Court's order.
So then you hold on to
That I do not know.
How many votes are we talking about that were provisionally cast after?
That I do not know.
So you hold on to them just in case they can, if there's some sort of a
Yes,
court decision that they can be counted, but right now, as we speak, they cannot be counted.
They are a record that has been created in the elections process, so they will be maintained for review. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Does the Supreme Court order only apply to Harris County or Bell County?
No, the Supreme Court order applies to Harris County.
Now, the folks who filed the original TRO at the district court level are Democratic-leaning organizations. The ones who filed the appeal up to the Supreme Court are Republican organizations. For an elections administrator, do you have any idea the provisional ballots, if they're more Democratic or Republican or people from more than one, which party this actually advantages or disadvantages?
No, we would not know how any voter that's casting a provisional ballot would vote.
Clear where they came from, right?
And I do not know where they came from.
Ballots could be counted in the future, and if so, what would be the order of that?
Pardon me?
Is there any chance these provisional ballots after 7 o'clock can be counted in the future, the after the table? What would that look like?
I cannot speculate to that. Did we hear? Did you ask? That I'm not sure of. I'm not sure that they're here. I do not know. I do not know.
Can you give us a better update on how the rest of the evening goes? Like the state Supreme Court issued their ruling, that's done, it's done, but you still have election to run. Can you have the early votes in? Where are you looking as far as time frames and expectations for the rest of the evening?
So now our process turns to waiting for the election results to come in from the polling locations. And as those results start being driven in by the polling place judges and their designees, then we will begin tabulating the votes that come into central count. And
We talk about the major issue with paper, the lack of paper, having pushed the time back 7 to 8. What's your overall thoughts on just being right here?
well, so I think the extension of hours was based on the fact that a number of locations did not open in a timely fashion, and we attempted to assess how many voters that impacted and how many locations that actually was that did not open on time. And to our assessment, that was about 4 locations. So from an overall perspective, I think our election judges has done a tremendous job. As I mentioned earlier, there are 782 locations. A handful of locations experienced problems. We are assessing what those problems were and what caused those problems. By and large, 90% of all polling locations, voters had a good experience. And we will build on that. We will assess what didn't go right. We'll assess what didn't go according to plan, and we will build upon that.
All right, we've been listening to the elections administrator for Harris County, Cliff Tatum, talking about the process today and what has happened in the TRO that extended the voting hours to 8 o'clock, and now the Texas Supreme Court issuing a stay on that TRO. So what does all this mean?
Yeah, it applies to Harris County. Chris Feldman is our KHOU 11 election law analyst. He's standing by to weigh in on this. Chris, your thoughts?
It is a ruling that, unfortunately, I think is going to create even more confusion. It's very surprising to see the Texas Supreme Court reach in and issue an order like this when really it's not going to have any effect. What it does is create more confusion about what's going on right now and what's going to happen in the ensuing days. But at the end of the day, the trial court simply issued an order saying that people that got in line after 7 p.m. Were allowed to cast provisional ballots. And the Supreme Court has dissolved that order, but everyone has already issued their cast their provisional ballots. They've been segregated. And they are to be reviewed by the ballot board in the first place. So the court really seems to have gotten over its skis a bit, in my opinion, and gone a bit far. It's very unusual for the court to do something like this. You oftentimes, all the time, defer to your judge that's on the ground, that can see what's going on and is actually hearing argument. For the Supreme Court to reach in so quickly, too, is surprising, and it's just going to create more confusion, I think, when there didn't have to be any more confusion added to the mix.
Ultimately, who's this going to be up to? These votes that were cast after 8 o'clock, these provisional ballots, ultimately, who's going to make the decision on whether those are valid or not?
Sure. Well, maybe nobody. And what I mean by that is much depends upon the margin of error victory for whoever wins a race. And so for this to really get litigated, it would require a specific race that was lost by a number of votes that could be cured by the provisional ballots. So whether anybody takes the time and the effort to ultimately litigate that remains to be seen. That would be an election contest. If there is not a margin of error that exceeds, or excuse me, a margin of loss that would be affected by the provisional ballots, we just may never ultimately know how those ballots are going to be handled. I mean, it won't be litigated to the nth degree is what I'm saying.
So in layman's terms, for folks who did vote between 7 and 8 o'clock tonight, who received that provisional ballot, what does this mean? It doesn't look like their vote is going to be counted?
I wouldn't say that at all, but it's very possible. Yeah, it's very, very possible.
It's a possibility.
It's a definite possibility. That is what the Texas Supreme Court has said, is that we're not going to allow those votes to be counted. But normally that would still get litigated at this point. You could still litigate those issues around it, but if no one wins by or loses by a margin where it makes a difference, then that order stands and it's never really litigated and facts explored.
Is clear, as you said, it does add to the confusion. All right.
Yeah, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult to even explain what they've done because it is so confusing.
Well, we'll be talking with you, I'm sure, later this evening. Chris Feldman, the KHOU election law analyst. Thank you for joining us, Chris. We'll be talking to you again, no doubt, a little bit later tonight.